the industry is still pretty archaic in its operation. I mean, as much as, okay, we've got 400,000 users on the platform. So, I mean, there's certainly hundreds of thousands of them that have a non-archaic operating platform. But if you look at the industry as a whole, it's still pretty manual. And I think we assess this as like a $50 billion problem. There are surveys that show clients spend more time on back office work than they spend with clients, right? There's surveys that show error rates on paper-based workflows are super high, like 60%, or that, the compliance alerts have got 95% false positives. There's so much stuff happening, I think, still in operations that is inefficient. And we're doing this in sort of this battle for talent, right? We've been talking about this as an industry, being able to create a viable next generation of financial advisors to serve. The industry retirement, the advisors are retiring out faster than they're being replaced. This points to figuring out the scale and efficiency problem pretty quickly, because I don't think the answer is less or worse service.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. On this episode of the show, David Knoch, CEO of Docupace, is with me for a conversation about the most underrated component of a financial advisory business's success: operations. David and I dive in on a variety of topics and examples that are sure to have you nodding your head with that feeling of, oh yeah, that tracks. Now, it might sound hyperbolic, but operations is the lifeblood of your business. It's actually where the real work is being done. Financial advisory businesses are like an iceberg. The client meetings, the marketing content, and all the client-facing stuff, that's the 25% that people can see. But underneath the surface, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to work just right for the business to run. You're absolutely going to love this episode. David really brings the thunder. It's awesome stuff. Now, before we get to the conversation with David, please do make sure you take a moment to subscribe to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on it. If you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit me up. I'm basically at Mike Langford everywhere on the internet, or you can shoot us an email, podcast@finsermarketing.com. Okay. Let's jump into the conversation with David Knoch. Well, David Knoch, so wonderful to see you. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
You know what? I agree. It is great to be here. We're both relating before we click record, we were talking about dad stories about playing sports with the kids and how hazardous that can be to a man's well-being. So we're both glad that we're here.
Yes, exactly.
It's so funny. It's so funny. And I've got, luckily now, my sports days are over for my kids. Like they're no longer playing sports. My daughter is in the marching band, so I am going to the football game tonight, Friday Night Lights here in Austin, Texas. Yep. But I don't have to worry about my daughter getting injured on the field or anything like that. I just get to watch the show. It's great.
Yeah, it's a good spot to be in. I unfortunately have all the anxiety of hoping my son doesn't get injured.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It is. I know that experience well. There's nothing worse than being a parent in the stands watching your kids and just hoping that nothing bad happens, while you're there. But then cheering them on, of course, when all the awesome stuff happens.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And ice cream afterwards. Let's go for ice cream. Right. All right. Anyway. All right. So let's dive into it because I'm really excited about this. And I'm super grateful to our man, Ryan George, the Docupace's chief marketing officer, because I had him on the show a few years back, and much of our conversation revolved around productivity improvements for financial advisory businesses. And we focus a lot on Docupace's improvements to the client onboarding and repapering process. So it's kind of like I felt like, hey, dear financial advisors and wealth management firms, we're moving out of paper and we're going to more digital movement type of stuff, right? Yeah. And I'll make sure we get that episode linked up in the show notes. But in preparation for this episode, you shared a much grander vision for Docupace. And it's clear that you and the team have been doing some innovating. But since I last chatted with Ryan, you mentioned during our prep call that you are seeking to become, and I quote, a purpose-built, universal operations platform to help advisors maximize the value of their technology choices. So That feels like a great place to kick things off. So let's do it. Tell me what you mean by that, and how are things been changing over these last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm perfect. I'm always happy to talk about that. Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know. I mean, I've been in the financial services industry for a while, right? Decades. We won't count how many. Listen, and I've seen the rise of technology. I mean, listen, I started my career at a firm that had shared dummy terminals, right? And we were using ledger books to keep track of, mutual fund trades and the like, right? So I think I've been, front row seat to the rise of technology. And over the past 15, maybe 20 years, the tools available to financial advisors have massively proliferated, right? I think Louis probably talked about it. The Kitsis FinTech map has gotten a lot more stuff on it over the past 10 years. Financial advisors and the firms that they work with have got a lot more choice about how to improve the financial advisor and client experience. And I think those technology tools have engendered some pretty meaningful practice management changes as well, right? We are, the industry as a whole is largely fiduciary, largely advisory based, largely relying on financial planning. That's not what the industry looked like 20 years ago, may not even have been what the industry looked like a decade ago. And so undoubtedly, all these technology tools advisors have changed the industry. The one thing that has not really happened at all is a change to the back office. Like, those technology tools are not particularly well connected. The data is not shared well across the platforms. People are still doing swivel chair. They're opening accounts manually. NIGA rates are super high. It's almost as if the other side of the coin from sales, which is operations, it's almost as if somehow the industry has forgotten that the promise only gets honored when the account gets opened or the transaction occurs. Like, there's more to a good financial plan than the plan. There's the practical reality of putting that plan into operation, right? Executing on the plan. And so our goal at Docupace is sort of never rest until we've got a technology platform available to all financial advisors, no matter their size, no matter their channel, no matter how they choose to serve, that solves for these operational challenges. Yeah, we do it in all the ways that Ryan probably talked about on that podcast, but being a purpose-built back office ecosystem for financial advisors is really important to us, because I don't think anyone else is doing it quite the way we are. And I think it's really important to securing a good outcome for investors, particularly those who are involved in a financial planning process.
I love everything you just said there, because it is the area probably where there's been the least innovation, right, over the years. And also, like, it's kind of like a lot of things in life, right? When you, as an example, drive a car, you get in the car, some of us car nerds understand what's happening under the hood or now, on the wheels and on the battery pack. I don't know. Right. But like, some of us car nerds understand how cars work, but a huge percentage of the people just get in the car, press go, and want the car to go. They don't care how it works. Right. And I think that's the same for a lot of the clients. They shouldn't. This should feel like magic to them, right? It should be correct, and they shouldn't be sitting there, going back to like the Ryan's conversation with like onboarding process. The average client can't understand, like, why is this taking so long for my money to move from point A to point B? Like, this just feels super easy.
It's actually not just the client that should feel like it's magic. I actually want the firms and advisors that serve those clients to feel like it's magic as well.
Good point.
Operations, when you get down into the details of it's incredibly complex. Like, the rules change from registration type to registration type, from custodian to custodian, from additional document or feature type to additional document feature type, to the firm the advisor is working with and their set of rules. Like, this is an exponential problem. Every variable that changes the forms that are required and the data that's got to be mapped and the information you got to, and it's mind-boggling, can be mind-bogglingly complex. And I don't want anyone to ever know it. Like, it would just be so much better if everyone thought new account opening, workflow, integration, document management, all the validation stuff, paying advisor compensation, surveilling transactions after the fact, whatever it is that occurs in operations. I would love it if everyone sort of ended up believing that it was a lot easier than it really was.
I love it. It's great. It's so funny. As somebody who has spent a lot of his career in the space, just as you have, and has been on, working for firms. And actually, you and I have some common history, which we'll be talking about a little later. Have been at some firms who are basically behind the scenes, right? Even today in 2025, when we're recording this, I think some people might be shocked at how much manual stuff happens, like how much stuff is actually still happening on a spreadsheet and then being transferred over to this type of stuff. And I'm talking at large companies. I'm not talking about like, rinky-dinky mom and pop, 2 advisor shop type of place. We're talking, big major companies are still doing a lot of stuff. So there's still a lot of ground to cover, which I guess will keep you employed for quite a long time. Keep you guys rocking and rolling. So you mentioned Louis, my conversation with Louis, and I'm glad you did, because, Louis Retief, by the way, for those who didn't watch that episode, if you didn't, go watch the other episode after this one. He was co-founder of Hubly, which is now a Docupace company. And he was on the show, and he recalled an observation that he made about 6 months prior to your team reaching out to him about acquiring Hubly. And, he mentioned that he noticed, just like you, that the number of companies listed on the Kitces FinTech map had increased, and by his count, he said it was like 550% or something like that since 2019. He was like shocked at how fast it was. And to him, that was an indication that consolidation or a roll up or whatever is on the horizon. He was just like, yep, this industry can't support that many firms on this, on the tech side or whatever. And it turns out he was pretty astute, at least in his observation for the fintech providers and as it related to Hubly. But, as you and I know, we've been seeing this consolidation and roll up happening for financial advisory firms for quite some time. This is not a new thing. People talk about the aggregators and this and that. So it got me thinking, how has Docupace's role evolved amid this shift to an increasing scale of firms through M&A activity? How have you seen your role shift?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the role is shifted. Certainly in my time at Docupace, which is about 5 years, I think we've been pretty consistent. Now, we haven't consistently been able to execute on it, but I do think we've definitely paid attention to the factor that you were just discussing that Louis brought up, right? I mean, it is an interesting question to ask, like how much more innovation and fragmentation can get created in the wealth tech space. Like what is the maximum number of technology tools that can be available to financial advisors that they could possibly understand, diligence, incorporate in anything else other than a copy my best friend mentality, right? Like I'm just doing what Mike's a smart guy. Mike hired technology X. I'm just going to do it myself. I mean, so I don't entirely know where that goes. And we can talk more about this, but I think our view has always been that businesses that are sort of purpose aligned with us, Louis' firm being one of them, right? Firms that have gone out to try to solve back office or operational challenges for advisors. I don't know. There's something about being in that club that makes us kind of want to band together. Yeah. And so there is a common bond that we've noticed something or trying to solve for something that most others haven't tried to solve for. And so Docupace has been, I think, leaning into that. When I describe this back office ecosystem, and from my standpoint, it's fairly clear that I don't know that I can build the complete back office system fast enough to be able to do for the financial advisor community what we want to do. And so this means, look at the landscape and try to figure out who would be, how would we be better in partnership with somebody than we would be separately. And if we can figure that out, then great. And if we can't, we'll probably still be friends. We just, may not share our domain name.
I love it. It's really interesting. I want to revisit your journey, right? And talk about the industry's evolution here a bit. And, we're just talking about like we've seen roll up and so forth, but you've already touched a little bit on it, like what you've seen, back in the early days, watching people work with ledgers and things like that and dummy terminals. And it turns out, by the way, you and I teed this up a bit ago, we have a lot of stuff in common, actually. Both of us are from the Boston area. We're both raging Celtics fans, which we found out at the prep call, which is great. And I mentioned that dual citizenship has its privileges. I live in Austin, Texas, so I can also be a Spurs fan. But when I do go to the Spurs game and the Celtics are in town, I am in Celtics gear, just for everybody to know. It's
you have to be.
Exactly.
You have no choice.
And
you would lose they would revoke your birth certificate.
100%. And when I go out to Vegas every summer for Summer League, so we are crazy into the NBA, I am also always decking out in Celtics gear, just for the people who know. Anyway, we also both, you and I, early in our careers, and turns out we were there at the same time working at State Street, which is kind of wild.
Yes.
I know. That is so cool. We were at State Street at the same time in our careers. So, thinking about that, you've had this vibrant career prior to joining Docupace. You've had the experience of being on the wealth management side and not always on the tech side. Right. I'd love to get your take on the evolution of the industry from the perspective of someone who's, kind of seen it all, if you will. Maybe not seen it all, but you feel like you've seen it a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on earlier. I think one of the things that I've really appreciated about our industry is how I think the lines between channels have continued to blur.
Yeah.
I think if you look back a decade ago, there were lines between wirehouses, regional firms, insurance-based firms, independent broker-dealers, fee-based financial planners, and RIAs. Like there was, I think the lines between those channels were I feel like they were fairly distinct. And maybe that's only in context to today. Yet, having been in some of those channels, but not all of those channels, the theme that continues to resonate for me is I keep being around people who are trying to do the best they can do for the clients they serve, right? Like a lot of these have been a lot of the advisors I have worked with have been in smaller communities. Yeah. They've been trying to do the right thing for the people in their community, make their lives better. And yes, it's a profession. It's their vocation. They are getting compensated for the work they're doing for their clients. But I've had the privilege of being around people who are motivated by service as much as they are economics. And so in that context, then the distinctions in the industry, around channel seem to me to matter less. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't actually matter, but it feels like the difference between sort of practice and philosophy or practice and marketing is less distinct. And so over time, I think the industry itself, because my observation was true, I think my observation's true. I think over time, those lines have started to blur and the industry has continued to progress as what it truly is, which is an industry full of people who are called to service to others, right? I mean, every person in the financial service industry that I seem to run into is called to help people, live out their hopes, dreams, and aspirations in some way, right? There's this idea that everyone is making promises to the people or institutions they care about, and they don't always know what to do to make the promises come true. Like, I'm going to make a promise to send my kid to school, but how the heck do I save? And what's a 529 plan? Or, my church has meant a lot to me, and how do I make sure that I leave a legacy there that allows it to make that difference to other people? Or I want to be the first person in my family to be able to, buy my own house, and that's getting harder for people to do, or whatever that promise is. I think financial advisors are there to make sure that promise comes true. And so I've seen the industry seem to converge more and more around service to clients, and I think forget a little bit less about what channel we're doing it in. Yes, are there still distinctions between the fee-only advisor industry and the Series 7 holders? There are. When push comes to shove, I wonder if they aren't motivated by the same thing, and they've just started in different spots and still trying to arrive at the same endpoint. I hope our industry never loses this element, because it's an industry that it's a privilege to be part of and to try to support, because at the end of the day, there are people that are going to have that they and the generations to follow them will live a different life because of the financial advisor that decided to raise their hand and help them out. That's pretty cool. I love that.
I love that that perspective on the space, because if we're talking about like how has the industry evolved, like at one point in time it was very product and sales oriented, but over this last 2 decades, let's call it, it really has shifted towards, as you're describing, that trusted advisor, people of doing service. I love that attitude of like, it is people who are service minded, because when it becomes a relationship where like, hey, I'm not getting, it's not all about commission and selling you something and then telling you like you need to buy more stuff and sell the stuff I sold you before, that type of thing. When it starts to become about me helping you achieve your financial goals and me actually knowing what those goals are, suddenly becomes a dramatically different equation, right? And to your point, it doesn't really matter about the model. And frankly, the consumer doesn't really know. You know what I mean? Right. You see some advertising and marketing going out there by certain firms talking about, being an RIA and what that means, having a fiduciary relationship. But by and large, the financial consumer just knows, hey, I'm at a point in my life where I need some guidance. To your point, I've got kids, church is important to me. I'm making enough money where I care about it. I want to make sure I keep it and, grow it and so forth. I need to talk to somebody. Let's go talk to that person. And they find their person. Who knows how they found them, but they find them. And usually once you find the person, as long as things are going reasonably well, you're going to stay with them for a very long time, right? It's going to be a relationship. So I love the fact you put it in that perspective of like, we are in an industry of service.
Well, I mean, so sort of tie it back to sort of what Docupace does, right? I mean, this is something we try to tie the organization into, right? Because the farther you get away from the client, the harder it is sometimes to see what I just described, right? And so being able to remind the organization that executing a financial plan matters, right? So I'll give you an example. I'll ask you this. Have you gone through a financial planning process?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What were the two hardest things to talk about?
So where you're going to retire is a really important one, right? So where? Because, my wife and I we have some shared stuff, as you might imagine, but where is up in the air is a tough one. And then I think the legacy question was a big one for us, right? Yep. We're pretty in alignment with the college planning, like what do you do for your kids college-wise? But those two things are like, where are we going to spend our years once the kids are out of the house? And then, what do we leave?
If you were to level it up one, what were the two hardest parts? You've got one of them, but level it up. What were the two hardest things to talk about?
For us?
Yeah. Go as high level as you can. 100,000 feet. You're looking down from the moon. What are the two hardest things?
The two hardest things?
You touched on one. You're almost all.
I think how to spend those retirement years, right? Like to me, like and then what's that lifestyle going to look like? That would be,
There's two things you got to talk about: money and mortality. You know what I mean? Like, because you touched on one, legacy, right? Yeah. But money and mortality are really hard for people to talk about.
Yeah.
And whatever that form takes. But culturally, right? We just, we don't tend to talk about money, and mortality is weird to talk about. And right. And these things are hard. And so you go through a financial planning process and you have no choice to talk about money and mortality.
Sure.
You have to, because of everything you just described. Those are all money questions. Those are mortality. Some of those are mortality questions. You get through it. Financial advisor gives you a financial plan that you're like, this is the embodiment of my hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Like if we work together and do this thing, I have confidence I'm going to be okay. Right. That's hopefully the outcome of the plan. And then you got to implement the plan. And maybe your advisor implements it. Maybe you implement it on your own. Depends on who you're working with. I have no judgment around which one you do, but it gets implemented. And then your name gets spelled wrong. and then the transfer takes too long to go through. Right. Or your advisor's or the person who's implementing it, or your advisor's got to call you back and, get this form they forgot to fill out or whatever it is. And then, okay, fine, you get through it. It's a pain in the butt, probably irritates you. Yeah. And then something happens in your life. You got to visit your financial advisor again and talk about the financial plan. And you hesitate because you remember it's hard enough to talk about money and mortality, never mind the pain that we had to go through to get this thing actually implemented. And so don't pick up the phone as quick. We don't take the action. Maybe we try to do it on our own. And so I think the better we get operations, the better the whole financial planning process is, because if financial plans are executed well, then I think there's more financial plans. And there's more people, whose financial plan actually works for them. And so, yes, we are very far removed from the client, the financial planning process, but it doesn't mean that getting operations to be excellent doesn't doesn't matter, right? It matters tremendously because we're the thing that completes the cycle.
Yeah. I love that. And you know what? It's so easy to appreciate it the way you just described it, because think about like the things you do frequently, like that are a little simpler, like going out to eat at a restaurant. You go to eat at a restaurant, the food can be great, but if other elements of the service experience stunk, like, hey, you know what? We got there, my name was on the list. I put my name on the list. And I saw lots of people who came in after me getting seated. And I go up there and I'm like, hold on a second, how'd you skip over me? I finally got the courage to go up and talk to the lady again. And now I'm a little mad and hungry when I sit down. And then some other things happened that, again, the food was ended up being really good. The product was good, but elements of the delivery of the product stunk. And what do you think of that restaurant now, right? And the same can be true for an advisor.
100%. Yeah. This is why operations matter.
Exactly. It does matter. Absolutely. I agree. I love it. I want to talk a little bit more about the recent changes at Docupace, because you're getting bigger, and you're getting bigger, in part by acquisition. And I want to talk about that. But I think one of the fascinating things is when I was talking to Louis earlier this week, one of the things I did in prep was I always go check out somebody's IMDb, their LinkedIn. I always call it the IMDb, like their movie history, right? Like I would check it out, look at like, oh, where did this guy come from, and so forth. And Louis kind of jumped into the space with a passion for operational efficiency pretty much right out of college, right? He didn't go the journey that you and I had, right? He just,
right.
But you've had the front row seat to technological transformation, as we've talked about. And recently you've acquired Hubbly, and then before that, Precise FP. And at least on my vantage point, or from my vantage point, excuse me, you seem to be letting them run independently. You kind of just alluded to that earlier on in this conversation, Louis' company, you just kind of so how are you finding this kind of convergence of leadership perspectives, and what's your overall leadership philosophy? Because it's really kind of neat. I love talking to leaders like yourself and kind of getting a feel for like, how are they managing all this, stuff as they grow and the industry changes?
Yeah, ultimately, some of this is dependent on the organization we're acquiring, right? Because of the 3 acquisitions we've done, 2 of them are pretty independent, Precise FP and Hubbly, as you mentioned, and then one of them, Giacomo, isn't independent at all. It's completely been subsumed into Docupace in its entirety. And each one of those decisions sort of made sense on the merit. And so maybe this is kind of where things start, right?
Yeah.
I think to the degree you can have sort of no competing agendas, like going into the conversation with Louis, we didn't tell Louis one thing and then acquire Hubbly and try to do another, right? When we acquired Giacomo, who's been combined into Docupace, I don't think we told them one thing and then ended up trying to do another, right? And I'm not suggesting that any particular action is off the table. Like there are clearly 2 cases where we've brought in companies and let them be independent. There's a case where we've absorbed it all. There could be other cases where things like financial metrics and synergy are the thing we're going for. And you could end up with an acquisition where people don't end up remaining with the combined organization, right? What's key is that all that's on the table early on and not a surprise later on, because that's a, whatever the culture is going to be, that's a culture killer. Like when you're done, you are together, you're going to be together, you're going to try to run this thing together, right? And so, but if you're talking about overall philosophies, things that might be common across all of this, I sort of believe that Docupace, or everyone, but let's just keep it in the Docupace context. I feel like we're better when we include all the voices. Like Docupace is from a practical operating standpoint, we're a pretty flat organization, particularly amongst the senior most members of the team. And I say senior most, I don't mean this by, hierarchy, tenure, like some of this, hierarchy and tenure may be part of it, but a lot of it just ends up being sort of contribution based, willingness to jump in. Like there's a group of people at Docupace that don't have title or seniority or whatever, and are still kind of, an important voice for us to listen to. And I think this matters a lot. And so, if you look at it as things that don't work for us, like we really don't like the hero. Well, we do it in context. We don't like the hero of the company. Like you can't show up inside our walls and be like, I know better than you. I'm smarter than you. Right. It doesn't work, particularly in our technology organization. Like we love heroes of the moment. We don't love heroes of the company.
Makes sense.
And so this ability to collaborate without ego is important to us. Like if you were to ask the organization about its shared values, you would hear things like collaboration, like transparency, like innovation, integrity, client centricity. These are words that would show up fairly commonly if you were to ask all 200 of us to describe what makes us unique. And so these things become tests of the culture and the people beyond just the technology. And so if you were to look at then how Hubbly and Docupace work together, it works together with collaboration, transparency, innovation, integrity, and client centricity. Like if you look at it through that lens, it's no wonder that Louis and the Hubbly team have an opportunity to live inside the Docupace ecosystem with a shared vision, but still be able to execute on that in ways that matter to them, their product, the owners of their like the subscribers to their product, like that. It's easier to come by that. There are some non-negotiables here. Like if we will combine together elements of the organization, like the non-roadmap stuff, right away. There's just no point. We don't need to have 2 HR organizations. We don't need 2 finance teams. Like, I'm not saying people go away. I'm just saying the teams come together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think the roadmap doesn't. And sometimes this frustrates people because I think there's an assumption that when you do an acquisition, you need to integrate the roadmaps together just as quickly as you would HR, finance, marketing, whatever. I actually don't think that's the case. For a technology organization, I think all of them, certainly for us, the things you can do are well beyond the capacity to do the things. Like we're always going to have a backlog in the roadmap. We always are. And if we ever run out of interesting things to do, we got a problem. And so in that case, then integrating the new companies, like creating an integration, trying to figure out how to, advance elements of their roadmap, whatever it is, their roadmap items go into the pool of roadmap items we have as a company. We all work together to prioritize the roadmap and figure it out, and the chips fall where they may. And so if a super deep Hubbly integration is the most important thing to Docupace, then it will get done first.
Interesting.
And if it's the 4th most important thing to Docupace, then it will get done 4th. As opposed to sort of artificially putting it in a position, just because we did an acquisition. So, I mean, I promise you, we are better because we have senior people from acquired companies contributing to the overall business strategy. Like Louis not just helping us with Hubbly. DeVere is not just helping us with Hubbly, senior engineer there, and Daniel on Precise FP is not just helping us with Precise FP. And you go on down the line. Like all of the people at Docupace, particularly senior-most people, they have the ability and are contributing to overall organizational strategy. And when we break the huddle, then we go off and do our thing, and maybe it's on our product, but we're here for something bigger, all of us. And so anyway, that's a long answer.
No, I love it. I'm fascinated by this, by the way. And I always have been, like, so, kind of going back to some of my history, I was at Fidelity Investments on the team with Active Trader Pro when it was being developed. I wasn't there when they made the decision, but I was there shortly after the decision was made to build their own versus buy CyberTrader. CyberTrader ended up being acquired by Schwab and so forth. But right before that, Fidelity was right there. We might buy this type of thing. And they made a decision not to do it and built ActuTrader Pro. And ever since then, I was a young guy, right? In my 20s, I think back then, whatever. I've been kind of I've nerded out on stuff like that, right? This is fascinating. Like this decision to do we acquire a company or do we build it internally?
Yep.
And so I'd love to get your take on this because, for on your side of the table, you're the acquirer, right? So you obviously have your lens. And how do you go about looking at companies like Hubbly and so forth? I mean, I love the fact that you just covered the fact that, hey, when you're acquiring a company, you're not, sometimes you are, I guess, you're just acquiring the tech. You could just be, you could be acquiring a location. We need this, this venue here or whatever. But you've taken I think the smarter, holistic view of going, all right, we've acquired not only this technology, acquired a customer base. Oh, by the way, we've also brought on these really smart people who are really smart and have more to say than just about their lane. Don't stay in your Hubbly lane. You get to be a part of this company now. What is your lens like when you decide, okay, we have a gap, it needs to be filled. Let's go look at it. And then how do you go about shopping for companies?
Yeah, I mean, the shopping part, the shopping part's actually somewhat easy, right? I mean, just because they're going to come in two ways, right? One, there are investment bankers who will bring you stuff that they're offering for sale, right? And you want to make sure you know all of them and they know you and they bring either you or your private equity firm that you're working with the opportunities and I think we're in those conversational channels. I think the second one is being able to identify the kind of product solutions, categories that are going to be good for you. In our case, I think we've got a reasonably clear sense of the kinds of technologies that would be, better inside Docupace potentially, right? Cases where 1 + 1 would equal 3, that there's this positive synergy that comes about as combining businesses together. I think we've got a sense of that. Again, broadly speaking, it's operations technology that's serving financial advisors. And you can either, have relationships with them and reach out to them and talk to them, or you use a third party to try to go out and help you fill the top of the funnel and see who's interested and have the conversation. And so I don't know, there's no magic to this. You've just got to try to be as clear as what you want and have as many conversations, I think, as possible. I think when it comes to the build buy decision, that one for us is probably more meaningful because listen, we love talking to leaders of technologies. We'll talk to everybody about everything, right? And if we feel like combining the businesses would be a good idea, then we'll have that conversation. If not, then we'll see if we can do an integration. And if not, then we'll definitely be friends. There's no downside to the conversation sort of at the top of the acquisition funnel. They're always great.
Yeah.
I think from a driver standpoint of the build versus buy decision, it's kind of three factors, right? One is speed. And generally for us, that points to bringing it to, doing acquisition as opposed to build. Yeah. Because we're going to go faster to market with sort of proven, mature, established solutions. In our case, we're looking for point solutions mostly, as opposed to broad platforms. Thankfully, there's lots of point solutions out there. I think for us, what points to probably buy sometimes more than build is the ability to do parallel execution. We don't have to take something off the roadmap in order to add something in from a product standpoint. You can let the product team, who's super busy serving the 200 clients that we have today with all of the advancements and innovations we promise to them around the platform. I don't want to go back to a customer and say, hey, that AI thing we said we're building right now, we're going to have to wait a year on that because I just did this acquisition that you may not benefit from. I don't want to do that. And so the ability to execute in parallel is kind of nice, right? We do have to leverage people to do due diligence and think about integration and all that, but largely we can still keep the roadmap intact while doing other things if acquisition's the other thing. And then the last one is, financial analysis. I mean, a 10 million, I'm making these numbers up, but a $10 million expense in a build is different than a $10 million investment in a technology platform. And so we would look at it through that lens, particularly as a profitable organization. If we're going to sacrifice profitability, that's a different question than, are we going to bring somebody together with us and sort of accelerate our combined profitability? And so a lot of times, just whether it's speed, parallel execution, or this analysis, it's going to point to doing an acquisition if you've got the capacity to do it, right? I mean, you've got to have, a private equity firm backing you like we do. You've got to have a good lender like we do. You've got to have a good management team that can do the due diligence like we do. Like you've got to have the ability to actually do it. You can't just want it. If you want it, but you can't fund it or diligence it, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so that thankfully we have all of that available to us. Then you can start moving on to kind of the other things, right? Because we've definitely got priorities around what we would look at. There's definitely due diligence essentials that would cause us to move on quickly from an opportunity. But again, we are a better organization on every level for the acquisitions we've done, culturally, financially, technically, from a product standpoint. It's all better. Like we are. I'm grateful for every one that we've done, because it's, again, everything's better because of it.
Yeah, I love. It sounds like I'm like pumping you up here, but I like the attitude, right? Because something you said earlier, you can't have what do we call it? Heroes, right? You don't want to have like these heroes out there. You do see the CEO hero out there in the space where they're always out there. They seem to, jokingly, since neither one of us are, at least I don't think you're a Cowboys fan. You see the Jerry Jones type of CEO out there who's always like, I'm always going to be the guy in front of the microphone and talking about how this and this and this new shiny thing, right? Versus, hey, look, man, like we're going to bring in high quality people. We're going to bring in the solutions when necessary. We're not afraid to build through acquisition if necessary as well. And this is going to be great. And it's because we think it's the best thing for the company and for the customers. I think that's the right attitude. Yeah. Wrapping us up, I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, but I've got something really interesting I want to nerd out on with you. You mentioned AI. You teed up the fact that you got some AI stuff coming for your customers, and I know it was just kind of a passing in the conversation, but I love to have a glimpse at the future here. And everyone, frankly, you can't have a podcast today without mentioning AI. You have I think it's a mandate. There's a little check the box on AI. We talked about it. So at Docupace, you have a vantage point that AI will be the most useful to advisors in the form of what you've termed intelligent automation. I love the play, by the way, on AI and IA. It's great. Kudos to the marketing team. That's probably Ryan. So golf clap for Ryan and team. Awesome stuff, buddy. But I wonder if you could, add some color to the concept of intelligent automation. What your vantage point, because I think there's a lot of meat on the bone here for what it promises to modern financial advisory businesses.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're super excited about this. I'll give you a background first. I mean, we are a large, mature technology platform. I mean, I don't know that I can say for every technology platform being 23 years old is an asset. Yeah. For operations technology, I think it is, right? Because we've seen and solved, I feel like we've seen and solved every use case. Yeah. And so I think we're approaching AI sort of being respectful of the kind of clients we have, the size of the platform, the longevity of the business, the commitments we've made. And so we are not a business for multiple reasons that is in early startup phase that can run out there with a cool, crazy idea, right? And I'm not saying AI is crazy, but I think you get the point. Like we've got to approach this differently. I will say, because of the age of the organization and the number of clients we have, I mean, we've got close to 400,000 users on the platform.
Wow.
Ultimately, inside of Docupace is a lot of experience that can benefit an agentic platform. You can't. You can have AI do agentic work. You can have AI do transactional work. It's harder to do that when you don't have decades of experience in the practical application. Like, you still need, I mean, AI still needs to work off, an operating foundation, a data foundation, experiential foundation. Like, it needs something to operate off of, because it really is only as smart as it's going to be trained to be. So I'm using that. I'm using it as a background. I mean, regrettably, going to the AI challenge, I think regrettably, and you mentioned it earlier, the industry is still pretty archaic in its operation. I mean, as much as, we've got 400,000 users on the platform. So, I mean, there's certainly hundreds of thousands of them that have a non-archaic operating platform. But if you look at the industry as a whole, it's still pretty manual. And I think we assess this as like a $50 billion problem. There are surveys that show clients spend more time on back office work than they spend with clients, right? There's surveys that show error rates on paper-based workflows are super high, like 60%, or that, the compliance alerts have got 95% false positives. There's so much stuff happening, I think, still in operations that is inefficient. And we're doing this in sort of this battle for talent, right? We've been talking about this as an industry, being able to create a viable next generation of financial advisors to serve. The industry retirement, the advisors are retiring out faster than they're being replaced. This points to figuring out the scale and efficiency problem pretty quickly, because I don't think the answer is less or worse service. I think the answer is better efficiency inside the business. And so what Docupace is building is a series of sort of purpose-built assistants, agents, if you will, that are able to sort of smartly and intelligently perform specific transactions or perform specific activities. I mean, if you think about the way most of us interact with AI today, it's a search engine replacement, right? Most of us are asking ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whoever, right? We're asking it a question in a similar way we would have asked, a Google search engine a question, right? I think fewer of us are using it to automate other tasks, like sending of emails or creating a financial plan document. Or, I mean, not saying that doesn't happen, but that's less common. An AI agent, right? This concept of a digital teammate, right? An AI agent is able to sort of plan and reason. This goes way beyond just answering a question. Like, you can give it a goal, or we can train it on a goal, right? This intelligent agent, train it on a goal, and it can break it down into the tasks that need to be done in order to accomplish the goal, right? And so it can act much more human-like in that regard, right? The agent's able to, take an action in another system. Agent can learn and adapt as it's going. Like, it doesn't just give up if it doesn't know what to do next. It can actually self-heal and learn and keep going. And it retains its experience in memory and context, right? So it knows what trying to solve a CIP or OFAC mismatch means, right? And so there isn't some universal agent that does this. I mean, for us, there are a series of sort of purpose-built agents that, they rely on large language models to do some of the work, but they're integrated into APIs, they're integrated into other agents on other platforms, right? This idea of sort of agent-agent interaction is happening. It's tied into planning systems, or itself is a planning system, and it's sort of wrapped with safety and control mechanisms, so that there's human in the loop through this process. But there are manual actions that financial advisors are taking around account onboarding, account management, extraction from documents that we think these agents can help with. I mean, we have a surveillance platform. There are agents that can get rid of a lot of the false positives that are showing up there, right? Because a human is going through and they're reviewing all of the transactions and they're making human-based decisions and they're making a judgment call and deciding what to do next. But the first level pass at that, I mean, an agent can do that for you.
Right.
And with human in the loop, you've still got the ability to test and validate and deal with outliers. And anyway, if you look across the platform, we've got this vision of financial advisors being supported by digital agents that are able to have contextual awareness of the thing that they're doing,
right.
that they'll have sort of digital experience at it. And this will help allow financial advisors and their staff to focus on higher and better work, right? These are not the things that are probably giving most people joy in their work every day. These are probably things holding them back from delivering a better client experience. And so we're building, I mean, on the foundation of Docupace, with all of its experience and all of its complexity, we are building these agents that will support the advisors that we work with and their staff and make their life that much better.
I love it. I love it. I love the fact that you broke it down in your description of, how this is, at least this is the way I interpreted it. You kind of answered the question of like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You did say like, hey, there's this one super agent AI thing. And I think we hear that too often in the industry where people talk about AI is going to do all this stuff. It's like, at least in this phase where we're at right now, you're going to have to build specific agents for specific repetitive tasks, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of going back to the complexity of some of the things that, like, I'm pretty familiar with billing, just because my wife's role, and the complexity of just billing at financial firms is massive. And then when you think about a company like Docupace, which touches hundreds, as you mentioned, and then hundreds of thousands of financial advisors who have, in turn, millions of clients. Many of those clients are going to have different fee schedules. People don't realize billing is not simple, right? Like, because if my dad's a client, well, dad gets service for free or at cost or whatever. Like, so this, by the way, in order to win this guy's thing, we had to offer this other fee break, blah, 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 blah. It gets real messy, real quick. There's no such thing, right? So just that phase of a client's business is super. So you could not just tell AI like do billing.
No. but you can build a billing exception agent,
right?
That can go through, identify the billing exceptions, right?
Yeah,
because there's a basic rule set around it, right? Identify the billing exceptions. Research the billing exceptions, make some independent decisions around the billing exceptions, make corrections in the billing system, or send it into a workflow for somebody else to approve the theoretical corrections that get passed on to the billing system. And a billing exception agent can absolutely be created to work.
Right. And the agent can ask for more information, right? That's the other thing that people seem to. I like the fact that you mentioned that most people at this stage of AI adoption are using it like a search engine, right? Or some basic stuff like, hey, write a letter on this, whatever. Write a blog post for me on this topic. In this case, it's like, listen, when an agentic AI, we can not only tell it, hey, go do this thing. It can go, okay, let's just make sure I got everything correctly here. We're going to be using this. We'll just stick on the billing thing. Are we going to be using this fee model, or do you have something unique for this client? Oh, this client's unique. Okay, tell me what's unique about this client. Well, David's awesome, and he might be bringing some other clients in, so let's give him a fee break above X amount of millions of AUM, whatever that is, right? That type of stuff could be relatively easy for an AI tool to do.
And then it can see other similar scenarios and say, hey, are any of these people also bringing you, business like David is? And you may be like, no, Mike's not bringing me business like David is. Maybe we shouldn't be giving him an exception.
That's right. Exactly.
So once it starts to learn, it can ask you context and questions in context.
Yeah.
Right?
This is great stuff. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to see this in action. This is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, some of this is, future vision, but some of this is definitely being built right now. Yeah. Right. And so, we've published a vision paper, if you will, on our website that's got a lot of our, a lot of details about how we see this stuff working and what it's going to do and what it's solving for. Again, it's some of it very much underway right now. And some of it, by 27, I think will be real. Because by at the rate this is all going, by 2027, this is sort of an imperative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we got a year and a half, maybe. And so we want to be, we're trying to transcend the simple AI tooling and try to get to something at least that in our world continues to try to drive the scale and efficiency in operations. That is the purpose of Docupace.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I'm glad you're saying, like, listen, it's not now, but it is close to now. It's going to happen way faster. I use this quote all the time. One of my favorite quotes, Bill Gates quote, we tend to overestimate the amount of change that will happen in 2 years, but underestimate how much change will happen in 10 years.
Yes.
And don't allow yourself to be lulled into inaction, because it's really true. If you think about 10 years ago, what your tech stack looked like. I always use the example, like 10 years ago, most financial advisors had never used Zoom or any other type of video chat to interact with a client. Now, all the time, right? So think about like that. Like life changes. When it changes abruptly and quickly. And then in many cases, permanently. Like it'll never go back to the way it was. So great stuff. Well, David, we got docupace.com, primary website. You're active on LinkedIn. Anything else awesome? Like any other places we can find you where you're doing awesome stuff?
I'm doing awesome. I try to do awesome stuff behind the scenes at Docupace. I'm blessed to work with a really talented team that's trying to create meaningful outcomes for financial advisors and the firms that work with them. And so, my goal is to support them in being excellent. And so anyway, my best work's done inside the four walls of Docupace at this point, and hopefully manifested through what you see in our people and our products.
Sounds great. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. It's great seeing you.
Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge props to my man, David Knoch, for coming on the show and sharing his wisdom and insights. It's really cool to hang out with somebody who basically has paralleled your career in many ways, going all the way back to the early days at State Street. So awesome stuff. And by the way, huge props to my man, Ryan George, for introducing us. I'm glad he helped coordinate all this type of stuff. So thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Okay. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. And, be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.